The taste of copper flooded my mouth the moment Adept Thalison spoke those words. Citizen Kalen Voss. Designation: Seversezad Alpha 9992. You have been selected for the Emperor's sacred service. His augmetic eye word as it processed data streams I couldn't see. That sound like grinding wheels in the manufactorum where I'd worked for 15 years. The gray processing chamber stretched around me, cold metal beneath my bare feet. Sacred service. I'd heard the whispers. Everyone on Terra knew. People disappeared into the palace depths. We told ourselves they were blessed. We told ourselves many things to sleep at night. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice echoing small and lost. I'm just a factory worker. I maintain grinding wheels in Sector Gamma 7. No special skills, no training, no mistake. Adept Thalison finally looked up. His human eye was brown, tired, ringed by pale skin that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. The selection process is thorough. Genetic markers, psychic resonance levels, psychological profiles, all reviewed, all approved. You report to Sanctum level Omega 33 at the 19th hour. The walls seemed to press inward. Institutional beige that existed nowhere in nature. Fluorescent lumens humming with a frequency that made my teeth ache. What exactly is sacred service? Something flickered across his face, pity perhaps, or envy. You will sustain the light that guides humanity through darkness. There is no greater honor. He returned to his data slate. The conversation was over. 47 minutes through the transport tubes. 47 minutes staring at my reflection in scratched plasteel windows. Chosen. Selected. Sacred service. The words felt foreign, like a language I'd forgotten. My reflection was unremarkable. 34 years old. Thinning brown hair. Gray eyes holding no particular wisdom. A scar across my left cheek from a grinding wheel accident. Hands calloused from manual labor. Fingernails permanently stained with machine oil. An ordinary man. Or so I'd thought. My hab unit waited as I'd left it. 8 meters by 6. Cot, desk, food prep unit, lavatory alcove. On the desk, a single pict frame. My parents on their wedding day 47 years ago. They smiled with the genuine happiness of people who believed the future held promise. What would they think of their son's sacred service? The remaining hours passed strangely. Corpse starch rations turned to ash in my mouth. The primer imperialis, read hundreds of times, might as well have been written in alien tongue. I counted ceiling imperfections. 63 dents. 12 rust spots, 1 misaligned panel. When the 19th hour chimed, I was ready. The transport capsule was different from anything I'd experienced. Wood instead of synthetic materials. Brass fittings gleaming. The air smelled of incense, not recycled atmosphere. 7 other passengers rode with me. All selected. All trying to understand what that meant. We sat in silence until the young woman across from me spoke. Mira Ka. Her hands shook as she clutched an Imperial Aquila pendant. Data Analyst 3rd Class. Sector Beta 9. Kalen Voss, Maintenance Technician. Gamma 7. One by one, they introduced themselves. Marcus Thorne, Fuel Processor, Deep Works, 38 years. Helena Vex, Textile Worker since childhood. Dimitri Vasquez, Tech Servitor Operator, Augmetic Arm Gleaming. Yarn Cole, Teenager from the Lower Hive Youth Brigades. Senna Thale, Agri-Dome Worker, 40 years coaxing life from poisoned soil. Ordinary people. Workers. The backbone of the Imperium. None of us heroes. Just citizens who'd drawn algorithmic attention. Do any of you know what sacred service actually means? Dimitri's augmetic fingers tapped nervously. Marcus spoke up, voice rough from industrial fumes. My grandfather told stories. Before the purges of Gehenna, he claimed to know someone who worked the deep levels. Said they fed souls to machines down there, turned people into batteries for things too terrible to name. That's superstition, Mira protested, though her voice wavered. The Emperor protects. Whatever we're called to do serves a purpose. All service serves a purpose, Helena said quietly. That doesn't mean we survive it. The transport descended rapidly. Through small windows, I watched architecture transform. Utilitarian corridors gave way to elaborate stone construction. Gothic arches soared, carved with symbols that writhed when viewed directly. The air thickened, incense and ozone from high-energy machinery. We were entering the true heart of the Imperial Palace. Servo skulls drifted past, eye sockets glowing red. Massive machines whose purpose I couldn't guess. Pipes thick as hab corridors carrying glowing fluids. cables pulsing with electrical current, and everywhere carved, painted, etched into every surface the imperial aquila. The two-headed eagle, but down here it seemed different. More predatory, as if preparing to devour rather than protect. The descent continued. Past foundries glowing with artificial suns, past libraries where servo-scribes recorded information on scrolls of human skin, past chambers filled with vat-grown creatures I tried not to see clearly. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. 10 millennia of accumulated faith and technology pressed down like a physical weight. Finally, the transport stopped with a pneumatic hiss. Citizens, you will disembark. You will follow. You will not speak unless spoken to. The voice belonged to a red-robed tech adept, face hidden behind a brass skull mask. His movements were precise, mechanical. Other robed figures waited behind him, silent as statues. We followed through endless passages. The air grew thick, heavy with sanctity and electricity. Distant generator hums, tech priest chanting, servo-skull whispers, and underneath a deep thrumming felt rather than heard. The heartbeat of something vast and terrible. Checkpoints guarded by Skitarii rangers, augmetic limbs clicking and whirring as they scanned us. Each checkpoint took us deeper, further from the world I knew, closer to whatever fate awaited. The corridors changed again. Gothic arches gave way to something older. Rough-hewn stone replaced marble. Carvings became less elaborate but more disturbing. Symbols that hurt to see, faces that watched as we passed. Words in languages old when Terra was young. Still we descended. Temperature fluctuated wildly, scorching heat to bone-deep cold without warning. Lumens flickered, sometimes leaving us in darkness for long moments. In one dark moment I heard something that chilled my soul. A sound so low it was barely audible, yet filled with such anguish it seemed to reach directly into my consciousness and squeeze. Someone screaming in a place too deep for sound to carry. We came at last to a massive archway flanked by 2 custodian guards. Even motionless, they radiated presence that made my breath catch. These were beyond human, crafted by the Emperor's hand to be perfection manifest, golden armor gleaming, guardian spears humming with contained energy. They did not acknowledge us. They didn't need to. Beyond the archway lay a circular chamber with a domed ceiling disappearing into shadow. The walls were lined with alcoves, each containing a throne, dozens of them, arranged in concentric circles around a raised dais. And on that dais stood something that made my mind recoil, a throne larger than the others. More elaborate, more terrible, carved from black substance that absorbed light, cables and tubes snaking from its base into floor and walls, crystalline structures growing from its arms and back like malignant tumors, pulsing with internal light. Connected to those smaller thrones, sitting in them, were people. They were alive, chests rising and falling, but their eyes stared sightlessly, rolled back to show only whites. Cables ran into their bodies, needles and tubes piercing arms, necks, skulls. Crystalline growth spread to encompass them, forming a web of glowing filaments connecting each to the whole. Not dead, something worse. Part of the machine. Behold, the tech adept's vox grill made his voice sound like it came from the bottom of a well. The preparatory chambers for sacred service. Here the faithful are transformed. Individual existence ends, true purpose begins, Mira began crying, soft sobs echoing strangely. Marcus took her hand, though his own trembled. Sharn had gone pale as corpse starch, mouth hanging open. What happens to them? Helena whispered. The skull mask turned toward her. They become part of something greater. Their life force, their psychic potential, their very souls channeled into the great work. They sustain the light that guides humanity through darkness. The Astronomicon, I breathed, ice water understanding flooding through me. Indeed, the beacon that allows our ships to navigate the warp. That keeps chaos at bay. That maintains barriers between reality and nightmare. It requires constant feeding, constant sacrifice. The souls of the faithful willingly given, transformed into light that preserves our species. The truth hit like a physical blow. I'd heard of the Astronomicon. Every citizen knew of the great light shining from Holy Terra, but I'd never connected it to this. Never understood the light was literally made from human souls burned away to fuel something beyond comprehension. 1,000 souls per day, the tech adept continued, voice devoid of emotion. For 10,000 years. The price of survival, paid in human life. You have been selected to join that number, to add your essence to the Great Beacon, to become part of the Emperor's will made manifest. 1,000 souls per day. 10 millennia. Billions of people had sat in chairs like these. Billions of ordinary citizens pulled from ordinary lives, transformed into something beyond flesh and mortality, all to keep a single light burning. How do you choose? Dmitri asked, augmetic arm whirring as he clenched his fist. How do you decide who lives and who dies? The selection is thorough. Genetic markers indicating psychic potential, psychological profiles suggesting stability under stress, physical conditions allowing optimal energy transfer, age ranges providing greatest yield. The algorithms consider thousands of variables. Best suited to die, he meant. Best suited to be consumed, and if we refuse? Senna asked, weathered face set in stubborn lines. The mask turned with mechanical precision. Refusal is not possible. Selection has been made. The Emperor's will cannot be denied. You may approach your transformation with acceptance and find peace, or resist and find only suffering. The outcome remains the same. I looked around again, taking in the full scope of what awaited. Dozens of thrones all occupied. Dozens who had once been like us, now empty shells feeding a machine. The central throne is different, I observed. Indeed, it serves as focusing mechanism, channeling combined psychic energy and directing it toward intended purpose. It also houses the intelligence coordinating the entire process. What intelligence? For the first time, uncertainty flickered in the tech adept's mechanical voice. The fragment of the Emperor's consciousness assigned to oversee this facility. A portion of his divine intellect, severed from the whole and tasked with sacred service management. It has been changed by proximity to the process. 10,000 years of witnessing faithful death has affected it in ways we do not fully understand. A chill ran through me. A piece of the Emperor's mind isolated here, watching thousands die every day for 10 millennia. What would such experience do to any consciousness, even divine? You will be processed in order of selection. Mira was first. They led her to a smaller throne with mechanical precision. She walked slowly, as if dreaming, clutching her Aquila pendant until knuckles went white. When they helped her sit, she looked back with terror-wide eyes. Tell them, she whispered. Tell them I served willingly. Tell them I died with honor. But there would be no one to tell. We were all destined for the same fate. Needles slid into her arms with surgical precision. Tubes connected to neck, spine, skull. Crystalline growths extended toward her like hungry fingers. When they made contact, her entire body convulsed. Her scream echoed through the chamber. Pure agony that seemed endless. Then suddenly it stopped. Face went slack. Eyes rolled back. Connection established. Soul integration at 97% efficiency. Psychic resonance within acceptable parameters. Mira, data analyst from Sector Beta 9, ceased to exist as individual. What remained was a conduit. A living battery feeding the machine. Marcus went next. The old fuel processor faced his fate with stoic dignity. Worked with fire all my life. Fitting I should become fire in the end. His transformation was quieter, but no less final. Helena followed. Then Dmitri. Then young Yarn weeping silently as crystalline filaments invaded his nervous system. Each transformation slightly different. Each reaction unique, but the result always the same. Consciousness dissolved. Identity subsumed. Senna was last before me. She looked at the throne with undisguised hatred. 40 years coaxing life from poisoned soil. And this is my reward. Your reward is eternal service. Your essence will guide ships across the galaxy. Your sacrifice will preserve millions. What greater purpose could any individual serve? The purpose of living, she spat. But she sat anyway, because there was no choice. Her transformation was most violent, body convulsing for long minutes before finally going still. But even connected to the machine, something of her defiance remained. The readings fluctuated wildly as if some part still fought. And then it was my turn. The throne was warm when I settled in, heated by internal mechanisms or psychic energy. The material felt organic, as if made from living tissue rather than metal. As restraints closed around arms and legs, I glimpsed something moving within the central throne's crystalline matrix. A face. Human, but transformed by 10,000 years' exposure to forces beyond mortal comprehension. The fragment of the Emperor's consciousness, trapped within the machine, watching everything with eyes holding the accumulated weight of millions of deaths. Those eyes turned toward me as the first needle found home. The pain was indescribable. Not physical pain, though that was present. Something deeper. The pain of having your essence torn apart, examined, categorized, prepared for consumption. I felt my memories being sifted by an intelligence vast, alien, utterly indifferent to suffering. My first day at the manufactorum. The girl I'd loved for 3 perfect weeks. The taste of real meat on Foundation Day. Rain on the hab block roof. All cataloged, filed, prepared for integration. But there was something else in the examination. A presence feeling different from the cold analytical intelligence, older, more human, infinitely sad. The Emperor's fragment was not just observing. It was participating. Each death diminished it somehow. Each new soul took something from what it had once been. I am sorry, it whispered into my dissolving mind. I am so very sorry. Not the mechanical drone of tech adepts. Not inhuman majesty. The voice of a man who had seen too much, endured too much, sacrificed too much. Why? I managed to ask. Images flooded my consciousness. The galaxy seen from the Golden Throne. Millions of worlds spinning in darkness, each precious, each fragile. Ships moving through the warp, guided by astronomican light. Colonies founded on distant worlds. Children born under alien suns. Humanity spreading across stars, carrying consciousness to every corner of the galaxy, and pressing in from all sides. Enemies seeking to extinguish that spark. Chaos fleets massing in the eye of terror. Tyranid hive ships approaching from galactic rim. Orc warbands sweeping across sectors. Ancient Necron tomb worlds awakening. The choice was not between good and evil. Between freedom and oppression. Between hope and despair. The choice was between survival and extinction. Between continuation of human consciousness and complete obliteration. The price is too high, I protested, even as my identity began fraying. Yes, agreed the voice. It is, but the alternative is worse, more images. A galaxy without the Astronomicon. Ships lost in the warp, crews driven mad. Worlds cut off, falling one by one to enemies. Human civilization crumbling into isolated fragments. Prey to forces that had waited millennia. And worse, visions of what would happen to human souls after the fall. Not death, which would be mercy. Eternal torment in dimensions where suffering had been refined to art form. Consciousness preserved in agony, stretched across eons of pain. This is the choice we face. Sacrifice the few to preserve the many, or lose everything to forces knowing no mercy, no compassion, no limits to cruelty. I have made this choice 10 million times. I will make it 10 million more. I understood then. The Emperor's fragment wasn't cold calculating intelligence. It was embodiment of an impossible burden. The consciousness that had to choose who lived and died every single day. It felt every death. Knew every name. Remembered every face. Will it ever end? The pause told me everything. I don't know. I hope so. I pray for it every moment. But hope is not enough. Prayer is not enough. Only sacrifice is enough. My individual consciousness was almost gone, absorbed into the greater choir powering the Astronomicon. But in those final moments I felt something unexpected. Not cold emptiness, but warmth. Connection. Purpose. I was becoming part of something larger than myself. Something that mattered in ways I'd never imagined. The fear faded. The pain faded. What remained was belonging I'd never experienced in life. I could feel other souls in the choir, connected by threads of psychic energy pulsing with combined will. Mira was there, analytical mind coordinating information flow, Marcus providing stability, Helena, Dimitri, Yarn, Senna, all contributing unique essence to the greater whole, and thousands more. Millions. All burning together in a symphony of sacrifice stretching back 10,000 years. Farmers and soldiers, scholars and laborers, children and elders, all united in service to something greater than individual life. We were the Astronomicon. From our new perspective, I saw the galaxy spread like a vast, three-dimensional map. Every imperial world glowing with its own light, connected by warp routes making travel possible. Ships moved like blood cells through arteries, carrying cargo, passengers, information, hope, and guiding them all, our light. The beacon we'd become, shining from Holy Terra with intensity perceived across the entire galaxy. Without us, those ships would be lost, their navigators blind. Every safe arrival was victory paid with our souls. Every successful voyage bought with our deaths. Every connected world sustained by our sacrifice, but we were more than navigation aid. We were part of the Emperor's will made manifest, extension of his consciousness reaching into every corner of human space. Through us, he could perceive threats invisible from Terra. Through us, he could intervene in crises that might destroy entire worlds. I felt his attention touch our collective consciousness, vast, terrible, utterly alien. 10,000 years beyond mortality had changed him into something barely human. His thoughts moved on scales of time and space mortal minds couldn't comprehend. Yet something recognizably human remained at his core, a fragment of the man he'd been, preserved like an insect in amber within divine consciousness. That fragment mourned every soul feeding the Astronomicon. It remembered what it meant to be mortal. And it was grateful. Not cold ruler's gratitude. Warm personal gratitude of someone understanding sacrifice magnitude. He knew our names, our histories, our small hopes and simple dreams. He remembered the girl I'd loved and real meat taste and rain sound on plasteel. We were not just fuel. We were reminders of what he fought to preserve. Every memory we brought was another reason to continue. Another piece of human experience deserving protection. Days and weeks followed, if such terms had meaning in our new existence. I learned to perceive the galaxy through Astronomicon lens, to feel human civilization's pulse across a million worlds. But I also saw darkness pressing in, chaos fleets gathering, demon princes marshalling forces, heretic cults spreading poison, the great devourer approaching from galactic rim, orc empires consolidating, Necron tomb worlds awakening, and worse things. Things existing between dimensions, pressing against barriers, things feeding on reality itself. The Emperor saw it all. Every threat, every crisis, every small victory and crushing defeat. His consciousness stretched across the galaxy like a web, touching every world bearing his name. And somehow, impossibly, he held it together. Not through force alone, not through fear. Through will, through absolute refusal to surrender, through determination to protect humanity, even if it meant becoming something humanity might no longer recognize. The irony was not lost on him. He had become the very thing he'd once sought to destroy. God Emperor demanding worship, tyrant sustained by innocent blood, monster wearing humanity's savior's face, but he was still humanity's savior. Because the alternatives were worse, we felt his grief in quiet moments. 10 millennia of necessary atrocities, knowledge that every survival day came at costs no sane being would pay, understanding he'd crossed lines that could never be uncrossed, yet he endured. For us, for the species that had birthed him, then demanded he become beyond their comprehension, for the future that might still be possible. Through Astronomicon connection, I began understanding the eternal war's true scope, not simple good versus evil narrative, something far more complex and terrible, a struggle between different existence concepts fought on scales dwarfing individual lives, worlds, even species. Each enemy offered its own finality. Each represented a different way for human consciousness to end forever. Against them all stood the Imperium, flawed, brutal, monstrously oppressive, but still humanity's last bastion, and I felt something changing. The Golden Throne was failing. 10,000 years of operation had taken toll. Components designed for millennia were breaking down. The 1,000 daily souls barely sustained him day to day. Soon even that wouldn't be enough. Calculations ran constantly in his divine intelligence depths. Statistical models predicting decay rate, probability matrices exploring solutions, contingency plans for scenarios too terrible to contemplate. The conclusion was always the same. The Golden Throne would fail within centuries. When it did, the Emperor would die. The Astronomicon would go dark. Humanity would be left alone in a galaxy full of enemies who'd waited 10,000 years for this moment. Unless something changed. His attention turned toward distant space where something unprecedented happened. A human world where the impossible occurred. Someone found a way to create new technology that actually worked. For the first time in 10 millennia, humanity was innovating again. If this could be protected, nurtured, allowed to spread, it might represent hope. A way forward not depending on ancient systems, slow decay, or daily innocent sacrifice. The Emperor's will focused like a laser on that region. Power flowed through us across thousands of light years to manifest as miracle and intervention, but the effort was enormous. I felt strain ripple through every soul as he drew on our essence. Some simply burned out, consciousness dissolved. Others held on but were diminished, and still it wasn't enough. Something more was needed. Something not tried in 10,000 years. Ancient protocols activated. Powers he'd sworn never to use again because the cost was too terrible. But the alternative was worse. The transformation began slowly. The barriers between dimensions became more permeable. Distinction between material universe and warp began blurring. Not chaotic dissolution chaos sought. Something controlled, directed, purposeful. The Emperor was transforming space around Terra into something new. A realm where his will could manifest directly without intermediary systems. It was glorious. It was terrifying. A god ascending to true divinity. The process sent shockwaves through every soul connected. We felt ourselves drawn into transformation. Individual consciousness becoming part of something vast and sublime, and utterly beyond comprehension. This wasn't gradual dissolution. This was apotheosis, but it came at a price. Power required exceeded what even 1,000 daily souls could provide. The Emperor drew on deeper reserves. Systems operating flawlessly for 10 millennia began failing as energy redirected toward the great work. And we began to burn. Not slow, controlled burning. Fierce conflagration consuming everything we were and had ever been. Memories, personalities, individual consciousness, all fed into transformation fires. I felt Mira's presence flicker and fade. Marcus followed moments later. One by one, souls I'd known in the Astronomicon burned away, fueling something greater than any could imagine. My dissolution began. Memories defining Kalen Voss slipped away like sand. Childhood, pride in work, real food taste, rainfall sound, the girl's face, all feeding the fire that would remake the galaxy. But even as identity crumbled, something remarkable happened. Boundaries between choir souls dissolved. Instead of oblivion, we were merging. Not cold mechanical hive mind unity, warm organic consciousness fusion, preserving the best of what each had been while creating something infinitely greater. We were becoming part of the Emperor himself. Not as servants or tools or energy sources, as integral components of his divine consciousness. Our memories became his. Our experiences became his. Our humanity became the foundation upon which his godhood was built. In that ultimate sacrifice moment, I understood sacred service's true purpose. We hadn't been selected to die. We'd been selected to live forever as part of something eternal. Every soul that had ever sat in preparation chambers, every consciousness dissolved into the Astronomicon, every death that seemed meaningless and cruel and necessary, all had been leading to this moment. The birth of a true god of humanity. The Emperor's transformation rippled outward, from Terra like pure will wave. Across the galaxy, his servants felt the change. Space Marines knelt in sudden reverence. Imperial Guard commanders found themselves blessed with tactical insights, turning defeats into victories. Tech priests discovered prayers answered with unprecedented clarity. In the distant sector where innovation struggled to survive, battle tide turned. Chaos fleets found warp drives failing. Orc warbands discovered weapons misfiring. Tyranid hive ships recoiled from systems suddenly inedible. The innovations were safe. The future secured. 10,000 years of sacrifice price finally paid in full. But the cost had been enormous. The Golden Throne lay silent. Ancient systems exhausted by transformation effort. Preparation chambers stood empty. Crystalline matrices dark and still. Daily 1,000-soul sacrifice no longer necessary because there was nothing left to sustain. The Emperor had transcended physical existence entirely. He was everywhere now. In every starlight ray touching human worlds. In every breath drawn by faithful servants. In every thought turning toward hope instead of despair. The Astronomicon still burned brighter than ever. But it no longer required souls to fuel its fire. It ran on pure will of a being who'd finally achieved true godhood, and we were part of it. All who'd given lives to sacred service over 10 millennia. We existed now as facets of his divine consciousness, each preserving some small aspect of human experience, each contributing to the vast tapestry of memory and emotion, keeping him connected to the species he'd sworn to protect. Kalen Voss, factory worker from Sector Gamma 7, no longer existed as individual entity, but his memories lived on in divine consciousness. His love for the forgotten girl, his pride in work well done, his simple human joy and small pleasures, all preserved within something infinitely larger and more important. He was part of God now. And God was part of me. The transformation wasn't complete. It would take time for the Emperor's new existence to fully manifest across the galaxy. There would still be battles, enemies, crises, but the fundamental equation had changed. Humanity was no longer fighting a losing battle against overwhelming odds. For the first time in 10,000 years, there was genuine hope. New technologies would spread. Human colonies would expand. Barriers between material universe and warp would strengthen. There would still be suffering, still be death, still be countless small tragedies marking human condition across a galaxy of war. But there would also be progress, growth, the possibility that tomorrow might be better than today. It was worth the price we'd paid, worth every soul that burned to make this moment possible, worth sacrificing individual existence to become part of something eternal. The wheel had turned one final time. The fire had consumed everything and been reborn as something pure and bright and everlasting. The Emperor had transcended mortality and become truly divine. And we, the faithful who'd given everything to make his transformation possible, lived on in his infinite consciousness. Our sacrifice transformed into the foundation of a new age for humanity. The song continued. But it was no longer a dirge. It had become something else entirely. A hymn of victory, a celebration of sacrifice vindicated, a promise that the light guiding humanity through darkest hours would never be extinguished again. In space depths, ships found destinations more easily. On distant worlds, colonists looked up and saw the Astronomicon burning with renewed strength. In faithful hearts, prayers were answered with clarity not felt since the Emperor walked among mortals. The long night was ending. Dawn was finally breaking, and in golden light of a new age, sacrificed souls sang their eternal song of service and redemption. Individual voices lost in the greater chorus, but essence preserved forever in the consciousness of the God they'd helped create. Sacred service had fulfilled its purpose. The price had been paid. The future was secure. And in that security, that hope, that promise of better days to come, every death was justified. Every sacrifice vindicated. Every moment of suffering transformed into something beautiful and meaningful and eternal. And we, his faithful servants, had become the instrument of that protection. Forever and always, without end.